In this video, we have some very special comic books with some very special backstories that we're going to unbox here. And we also have a very important and upsetting topic that is affecting the comic book community that we need to talk about. Stay tuned.
GRAILS Comics.
Welcome to GRAILS Comics. This channel is all about comic book investment and speculation with tips on how to have this hobby fund itself. We also do a monthly giveaway here on the channel, and this month, if you subscribe to the channel, comment on this video, and like this video, you're entered to win a copy of Nova #1 CGC 9.8, the first solo series for Sam Alexander. And if you head over to brycecomics.com and sign up for the newsletter, you're entered to win another slab each and every month. And this month, it's We Live #1 first print in a CGC 9.8. A lot of rumors circulating that series has been optioned by Hulu. So without further ado, let's show the books that I'm talking about here. First up, we have Fantastic Four #1 in a 1.0, cream to off-white pages, origin and first appearance of the Fantastic Four and the Mole Man. And the Fantastic Four, of course, is Marvel's first superhero team. Just one of the most iconic books in comic book history, and we got it in a 1.0, and we're going to show some up close more details of the book here in just a second. But next up, we have Werewolf by Night #32 in a CGC 9.0. First appearance and origin of Moon Knight and Mark Spector, off-white to white pages, iconic book, also a really cool backstory, and we'll get some up-close shots of that here in a sec. And then to round it out, we have Fantastic Four #2 in a CGC 2.0, cream to off-white pages, first appearance of the Skrulls, second appearance of the Fantastic Four, Thing pinup, awesome pinup, by the way. Before I get into the backstories of these books, let's jump into taking a look at them a little bit closer. All right, so here's the Werewolf by Night 32, origin, first appearance of Moon Knight and Mark Spector, 9.0 off-white to white pages, and the graders notes say light bends to cover and small spine stress lines. When this thing came to me, it was more like an 8.0. We pressed and cleaned it and got it up to a 9, but it did have some color breaking spine stress, which you can see there and there and there, just a few spine ticks along the spine. The back, we cleaned it up really well, and it looks beautiful in the back now. And this is really disappointing because the light bends to the cover are up here, and what it's from is this book has an overhang. An overhang is when the cover is slightly bigger than the interior pages, as you can see there, and it overhangs over those pages. And I mean, this is super cheap, super delicate, flimsy paper from the Bronze and Copper Age. What happens is, you just touch it, you just look at an overhang wrong, and a little bend will happen and it will bend over. I had a Nova #1 that I have in my PC that I had to submit 5 times before I got the 9.8. The book was perfect, but every time I sent it in, there would be a new bend that would occur somewhere along the overhang, whether it was this side or the top, and when I get the book back, there's a new little bend right there from it just being touched. And so it took 5 times before I sent it in and finally got it encapsulated and graded after pressing out the bends every single time for it to not be there when they actually graded it. It's just, I'm not sure there's a solution to that for these Bronze and Copper Age books with overhangs. They're just super delicate, and it really makes you appreciate getting a 9.8 for a book with an overhang. So here's the 2.0. The graders notes say heavy creasing to cover, piece out left bottom of back cover, staining to cover, staple tear left center of front cover, tanning interior cover, tear right center of back cover, and wear all corners of cover. So, this book was well loved. Somebody actually erased something that was written right there before it came to me. It's interesting that they didn't put that in the notes at all. But this book was so fragile and delicate when I received it that the seller and I both decided that it wasn't worth pressing, because it could have become completely split. And so here is the piece out of the back cover. And, at 2.0, I didn't think it was worth pressing and cleaning it, because I didn't want to incur more damage, and I couldn't see it getting much more than that anyways. Here's the Fantastic Four #1, cream to off-white pages, and the graders notes say cover tanning, heavy creasing to cover, moderate staining to cover. It's interesting that they say moderate. I thought, it was pretty significant. I would have thought it would have been heavy staining, but it was just moderate, and it affects, I don't know, like 1/8 of the actual cover. Moderate writing indent center of front cover. And so there you can see the writing indent. Somebody wrote something like on a piece of paper on top of this. So it says peace out, left bottom of back cover. So this is a peace out. And also on page 12 is peace out. And we'll get back to that here in just a second. So small peace out, top of front cover, split bottom of spine, split top of spine, staple detached bottom of front cover, tear bottom of back cover, tear top of back cover, wear full bottom of front cover. So because of how delicate this book was, because of the spine split that went from like there to there, and the spine split on the top, it just wasn't worth the risk to press it. I was afraid that it was going to become completely detached, or that, you know, the entire page could actually break because the pages were so brittle. So we decided just not to press and clean it, and it just got what it got. All right, so now that we've looked at them a little bit closer, I want to give the backstory of these books. So this one here, the Werewolf by Night 32, is a collector here in my hometown that reached out to me and said, hey, I want to get this graded. I'm not sure if I want to, sell it or not yet. And I said, yeah, I can help you out. I'll charge you, for the pressing and cleaning and to send it off to get graded. And if you do want to sell it through the shop, I'll just take 10%. And we'll see. So I still have to talk to him. He's supposed to give me a call tonight to see what he actually wants to do with this. If it is available, it'll be available and up now on the website. If you don't see it there, then that means he decided to keep it. But I thought, why not? He's local, help him out, press and cleaned it, get it submitted, just have him pay all the fees and a little bit for my pressing and cleaning, just because it's such an iconic book and such a cool book. And the cool thing about this book is that he bought it, when he was just a kid. He paid $50 for it, and he kept it all these years. I mean, many, 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 many years, and it still retained this grade. It was a little bit, I think it was probably about an 8.0 when it came in, and we pressed and cleaned it up to about a 9.0. And for this book, The Fantastic Four, number 1, this was from a collector that bought this off the shelf from a drugstore for 10 cents. And good on him for actually keeping this all of those years. And the torn page in the middle, I'll put a picture up here on screen, was from when his daughter was, ruffling through his closet, and she found this book and she picked it up by that page and she said, look, Daddy, look what I found, and tore that big chunk of the page out. And that's why that page was missing. And so he kept it all of these years. And, one of the things that kills me about that is just thinking about him buying it off the rack. Maybe it was a 9.8 or 9.6. A 9.8 of this book, would be like, in the millions and millions and millions of dollars, because I don't even think there is a 9.8. I think the highest grade is a 9.6. And then it just slowly over the years degraded and degraded and degraded to where it is today, a 1.0. But that said, he kept it and he still had it. And that's more than 99. I don't know how many % of people can say that bought this book off the shelf, because I think there was a lot of copies of this printed, but only about 2,500 or so are on the CGC census, and who knows how many are still raw wild out there in the wild, but maybe about the same, about 2,500 copies or so. So the fact that so few of them actually survived and he kept it all these years is just so cool, to finally have it encapsulated. And that was the same collector that sent this in. He also bought this off the shelf. So now I want to talk about the label change announcement that CGC made. And you've probably seen other YouTube videos about this or posts about this within the community. So I'm not going to dive too deep into the details, but effectively what they're doing is they're removing some defects that were traditionally listed on the CGC label. And some of those defects that are being removed, we don't care about, right? Like if it's a defect that says tape on cover and you can clearly see that there's tape on cover, that is a bit redundant and it doesn't need to be on the label. But other defects are very important, like staples added after manufacturing, or effect story, or incomplete. There's many defects that are being removed from being listed on the label that are important. So you can't say, well, I like this about it, I don't like this about it. It's a package deal. This is happening. It's happening from CGC, and some of them are very important and should not be removed from the label, and they do affect the comic book community. And a lot of people say, you know, what's the big deal? They're still listed in the graders notes. You can go look up the graders notes. Well, there's a lot of reasons why that's not feasible in a lot of situations. Like if you're on an auction site and you're looking and perusing hundreds of books, right? Because there's hundreds of awesome key issue books. And if you're like me, you know, you rule some out that have certain defects that you just don't want to collect in your collection. So it makes it completely unfeasible to go look up 100 numbers and type in a clunky certification number on a separate website and look up the grader's notes just to find out the condition of the book. I mean, you should be able to know the nuts and bolts by just looking at it, the main things that are wrong with it. Now, when you have to find out some of those main things that are wrong with it by going through this extra step, it is a problem when you're doing it for a large number of books. For dealers like me, it's a problem when I'm buying collections because now I have to go look up a large number of books. Maybe you're in an Instagram live sale and the seller is either shady and want to try to conceal the defects, or they don't know what the defects are. And if you're going to buy a book in the moment in a live sale, you won't have time to go look up the certification number. Or you're in a whatnot sale where there's a lot of shady sellers that are going to take this and use this to their advantage to take advantage of other people. Or you're at a comic convention and maybe there's like, I don't know, 100 other things you'd rather do at a comic convention than sit there on your phone and type in certification numbers. I mean, it's baffling to me how people are defending CGC for this and saying, oh, I don't mind spending my free time going to look up certification numbers. What kind of life do you live where you don't mind giving up your free time to go look up a certification number, something that a company should do for you, with the kicker is that so that they can benefit from it. It is mind-boggling to me that people are defending them on this. And here's an example of something that just absolutely cannot be defended. Let me explain what I'm talking about. It says right here on this label, Peace Out, page 12, effects story incomplete. Let me put up on the screen here what this actual page is. I got this book from the original collector, okay? He sent it to me raw. I took pictures of the defects. That's how I know what this piece out of page 12 looks like. But it just says on the label, Peace Out, page 12, okay? And it also says effect story incomplete. They are changing this to where it won't say effect story incomplete. So it'll just say Peace Out, page 12. Okay, so I thought, well, I can still go to the grader's notes and see how big the piece out is, if it affects the story or not, right? Well, if we go to the grader's notes on this, it just says Peace Out, page 12. So that means after this change has been implemented, if there's a big piece like this torn out of the interior of the page, it could be a huge part of the story. It could be the first time Batman appears in the comic book in Tech 27, or it could be the first time you see Sue Storm or something. It'll just say Peace Out, page 12, or whatever page it is. And here's an example, I'll put up on the screen, another defect that they use the term peace out. So this is a peace out, and this is a peace out. They use the same term to describe these things. So you don't know, going forward, after books that are graded after this change has been implemented, you don't know if peace out is this big or this big. You don't know if it affects the story. You don't know anything. All you know is peace out, page 12. Okay, so sellers are going to use this to their advantage and say, not even shady sellers. At a certain point, when I sell this to someone else and they bought it, they're no longer going to have access to the picture of the piece out, right? So just one owner removed and that information is gone. So CGC, in effect, is no longer certifying this so that we can be comfortable with what we're buying and what it is. They are effectively concealing defects in a $10,000 book. Okay, and say it's Detective Comics 27, say it's a $250,000 book, and it says, Peace Out, page 5, and there's no more information, and there's no way you can get access to that information, and if you're in the market for that Tech 27, it's on an auction house, they don't have access to the information. All they have access to is the grader's notes and what's on the label, and it just says Peace Out. You have no more information. You don't know what the piece is, you don't know if it affects the story, you don't know anything. So they're effectively concealing defects to increase the desirability and the value of defective books. And that should bother you. All right, I wanted to interject here that I did actually confirm with CGC that they are not moving the terms affect story, does not affect story, and incomplete to the graders notes. They are removing those terms altogether. And it's not removing a redundancy like they said in their press release. The terms affect story, does not affect story was never listed in the grader's notes. It's always just been on the label. So they're not removing a redundancy here. They're just removing those terms altogether. This might not be some big conspiracy for CGC to increase the value of defective books. This may be just CGC catering to a small number of prominent members within the comic community that are requesting this change. And this may be CGC just accommodating this request, not fully understanding the ramifications of it. This wouldn't be the first time that CGC made a complete bonehead decision to honor the request of a customer, not thinking through the effects that it would have. Case in point, when they encapsulated Bad Ideas Invisible Comics, and they encapsulated and graded these invisible comics, one at every single grade, from like a 0.5, 1.0, 2.0, 2.5, 3.0, all the way up to a 10.0, okay? And this was the request of Bad Idea, that this would be like a fun promotional way to promote one of their comics. And CGC is supposed to be a objective grading company, and effectively they just accommodated a customer and said, we're no longer going to be objective, we're just going to give it whatever grade you asked us to give it. I mean, this was just a terrible idea for PR, and they realized that after the fact and tried to recall it and rescind those books, but it was too late. So this isn't the first time that CGC has made a change without thinking through the ramifications, if that's what's going on here, okay? So I just want to paint the whole picture because I want this just to be completely honest. And to that point, originally, when I heard this, I thought that this was going to have a drastic impact on the sale prices of incomplete books, and that this could really affect our GPA number. So to understand what I'm talking about here, let's jump into GPA. All right, so here we are in GPA, and we're looking at Fantastic Four number 1, and I wanted to look up the difference in sales prices between a 1.0 that doesn't say incomplete and a 1.0 that does. So here a 1.0 that doesn't say incomplete in March of 2014 sold for $1,350. Okay, this was like 10 years ago or so. And here's a 1.0 incomplete, March of 2014, all right, the same time frame, March 2014. In the incomplete one sold for $1,972, and the not incomplete one sold for $1,350. So the incomplete one actually sold for more than this one. And if we look at another example over here, this is X-Men number 1, and if we go down to the 1.0 that does not say incomplete, October of 2019, it sold for $2,350. And here an incomplete in September of 2019, as close as we can get, sold for $2,831. So incomplete sold for $2,831. One that does not say incomplete sold for $2,351. So again, the incomplete one sold for more than the one that wasn't incomplete. So this was a complete shock to me. I thought for sure incomplete versions of these grails would sell for less, but that's not the case in these two examples at least. And I think what's going on here is when you get down to this grade level, 1.0, it's all about presentation. And whether it's a 1.0 complete or incomplete, it doesn't really matter as far as the sale price. What matters is the presentation. And so that was surprising to me, and I wanted to throw that in there because I thought, that now, effectively going forward, there's not going to be a category that says incomplete. This category on GPA is going to go away, and all of these sales are going to lump into the regular 1.0 sales. And I thought that would screw our numbers up, but looking at the numbers, it seems like that actually might not have an effect on it. But it is still, for me as a collector, incredibly important to know if there's a piece out that affects the story, doesn't affect the story, and whether or not the book is incomplete. I think that is imperative material facts about the book that is going to go away, and that's a real shame. Now, here's the next part of this is people say, why don't you switch to CBCS? Okay, well, first of all, even if I do switch to CBCS, and even if half of the comic book community switches to CBCS, we still need to get this changed. Even if I never submit another book to CGC, I still want this to be changed because the lion's share of comic books in this community are graded by CGC. And so if I'm going to be after a book, I want to have access to, the most amount of them. And if they're inadequately described and if information is gone forever, then that's going to rule me out from buying certain books in the future. So even if I do switch to CBCS, this needs to be changed. Inevitably, what is going to happen here is people that don't have access to graders notes, don't even know what graders notes are, maybe they're just buying the label and not the book, those people are going to be taken advantage of, okay? But to take it a step further, but first of all, that should bother you. The fact that a corporation is benefiting from taking advantage of unbeknownst people, that should bother you. But second of all, even if you are savvy, even if you are a savvy collector, you are a paid member, you have access to graders notes, even if you don't mind spending your free time looking up graders notes for some weird reason, there will be certain information that is concealed from you. You will no longer know about these pieces out that affect the story or not. Let's get back to the CBCS issue of switching to CBCS. So this isn't reason enough to switch to CBCS. This isn't the straw that broke the camel's back. This is just another straw on the camel's back. And we're getting a lot of straws on that camel's back, but this in itself isn't a reason to switch to a different grading company. For me, there's 4 main things that I look for in a grading company. Number 1 is turnaround time. Number 2 is quality control. Number 3 is consistency in grading. And number 4 is customer service. Now, here's the thing. I get a lot of books come through my shop, both CBCS and CGC. I mean, hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds, okay? I've seen a lot of slabs. And both CGC and CBCS have quality control issues. Both CGC and CBCS have grading inconsistencies. Both CGC and CBCS have long turnaround times. Okay, and customer service is the one thing that I don't really know about CBCS, but I can say for CGC, it's both horrible and pretty good. And what I mean by that is if you have just a regular run-of-the-mill problem with CGC, like your case was delivered and it was cracked, it got cracked in the mail, they're really good about fixing those regular run-of-the-mill problems. But as soon as you have like a next level problem, as soon as you need to speak to a supervisor, that is where I have been treated with a pattern of disrespect and unprofessional behavior. I've been treated like absolute garbage by management at CGC consistently, okay? And I'm not going to get into it now. Maybe I'll do it in a future video, but their customer service in that regard is really, really bad. A case in point, I reached out to them for this video. I reached out to them and said, I'd like to speak to management about this issue. And they're like, all you can do is send an email. And so, of course, I sent the email, and of course, I didn't get a response. And so, that's a case in point of trying to talk to management, and it's just a no-go. So CBCS has the same problems as CGC in a nutshell. So switching to them isn't solving the problem. And we haven't even talked about, the price cap yet for CBCS. And before we even talk about resale values of CBCS versus CGC, because let's just talk about it. CBCS does sell for less than CGC. And I think that is something that can be changed. I think that gap can be closed if we decide to do it as a community. But the other problems still remain, which is quality control, turnaround times, and consistency in grading. Because CBCS is under the same pressures as CGC. They've got this huge backlog and not enough employees. And if we all switch to CBCS, or a good portion of us, those are just going to be exemplified, and all of those problems are going to be really bad still. Just to give you an example of the bad quality control and consistency in grading, I recently got a collection in that had a $20,000 book. It was a 9.8, $20,000 book in a CBCS case. It had a 1/4-inch color breaking spine tick. I mean, a chunky color breaking spine tick. In nobody's world or grading standards does that get a 9.8. So that shows the inconsistency in grading. And second of all, the case was completely smeared. I mean, it looked like somebody took a Brillo pad and smeared the inside of the case, and there was 2 hairs inside of it. And that was for a $20,000 book. So that just shows you that they still have the same quality control and inconsistencies in grading as CGC does. And it's just gonna get worse if we give them more business, all right? So I am totally open to switching to a different grading company, but right now there really isn't like a better option. We're just kind of like in a time in this community where the market and the hobby has exploded so fast that everybody is under extreme pressures, right? And it's going to take some time for those kinks to get worked out. And when those kinks do get worked out, this will be a completely different conversation. But right now, it's kind of a conundrum. It's a problem without a solution. Like, there really isn't a good solution to this. We kind of just have to ride this out until the dust settles. But one thing for sure is that we need to keep banging our drum to roll back this change for the defects, all right? At the very least, the types of defects, all right? Like I listed in this video. And the last thing that I want to say about it, and probably, one of the most important things about it, is do not let this steal your joy. This hobby is supposed to be fun. This hobby is about these incredible stories, this incredible artwork, the incredible history in pop culture that is these comic books that we all love and adore and prize. And we cannot let this steal our joy. This is just one hiccup on the road. We need to respond as a community with this, but at the same time, don't blow it out of proportion, right? Like, don't let it steal your joy. Don't get into comment wars with different people on social media. That's not going to do any good, and keeping it in perspective, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. It doesn't affect every single book. This isn't like, the most egregious thing in the history of mankind. It is what it is. It's important, and we need to address it, but don't let it steal your joy. And so this is the 3rd time that I filmed my little rant about this, and I keep going back and forth, but I wanted to wait until I got this book back because I wanted to see how it played out. And I must have been right on the cusp of this change because it didn't go into effect yet on the label. Don't forget, you guys, if you're new here, if you subscribe to the channel, comment on this video and like this video, you're entered to win a free slab. And if you head over to bricecomics.com and sign up for the newsletter, you're entered to win a free slab over there as well. I promise there won't be any defects listed on the label. It won't apply to those books. And as always, thank you so much for sticking with me to the end of the video, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Bryce Comics.